Welcome to the School of Travel's podcast. I'm your host, Becky Gillespie, and each week I bring you stories of how travel can truly change your life if you take the chance to get out on the road and step out of your comfort zone. My guests also share travel tips and lessons they've learned along the way, which I hope inspires you to let travel be your teacher. Hello listeners, I am so excited to be back with some brand new episodes for you after a period of travel, after Christmas and into the beginning of February. I am now rooted and staying in Buenos Aires, Argentina for the next 2 months, so I look forward to catching up and putting out a lot of new episodes for you as well as doing new interviews, which I always love. This week, I'm very excited to bring you my interview with Mike LaRosa, founder of Coworkaholic.com and co-working consultant extraordinaire, which you will hear him explain more about in our interview together. Also, I often give you a bit of a heads up about the sound. I actually interviewed Mike on a rooftop in Trivandrum, India, which was the last stop on the Rickshaw Challenge, which Mike and I both were a part of, and actually we met on the Rickshaw Challenge. I will have a separate episode about the Rickshaw Challenge very soon. It was definitely one of the most memorable journeys I've ever taken, but I hope that you enjoy my interview with Mike and all that he has to share about co-working and also making the best strategy for using and gaining miles for future flights that you need to take. Mike is very good at this. So without further ado, here is Mike. Welcome to episode 12 of the School of Travel's podcast, and today I am here with Mike LaRosa, the founder of Coworkaholic.
Yes.
Yeah, who I have just met on the Rickshaw Challenge, which we have just finished here in Trivandrum, Kerala, India.
I'm impressed that you can actually pronounce that, and I've been butchering it. Everyone's like, where are you going? I'm like, airport code TRV. Well, because there's two ways that they spell it. One's, I guess, a shorter, was it Trivandrum?
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
Trivandrum.
And the other one I can't pronounce, so I skipped it.
Yeah. But no, we're fresh off 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
10 days.
Day by day.
It's been an adventure.
It has.
Yeah.
And finally we finished, not without a few scrapes and cuts and breakdowns. Were there tears on your side? We didn't cry in our rickshaw, but...
There were no tears. There was definitely some tense moments and a lot of German curse words because I was with a German and an Austrian, so... I added some German to my vocabulary for sure.
Well, either way, congratulations on finishing.
You too.
Thank you.
Alive,
yes.
Just with one scrape.
One scrape. I've got a scrape on my right knee after the very last day crashing and rolling the rickshaw with my partner Peter, who was driving. He's the loveliest Australian you'll ever meet, but out of nowhere we rolled. So now we're here.
Yeah.
And we're ready to roll into our next adventure.
Yeah.
But Mike, can you tell me a bit about yourself? Because I've just met you here this week, so
yeah,
there's a lot I don't know.
I am a co-workaholic. I'm obsessed with co-working. I grew up in D.C. And lived my entire life in D.C., even went to college in the district, in the city. And I kind of followed that typical path that a millennial kind of gets put into, right? Everyone has to go to college, whether or not you know what you want to do, and you finish college and you're supposed to get a job, and I should have graduated in 2007. My parents, I'm very grateful. They paid for my education, but the day my dad and my mom dropped me off, freshman year, first day move in, my dad looked at me and he goes, "You have 4 years. We're paying for 4 years. You take longer than that, and it's on you."
That's exactly what my parents said. So I went to 2 summer schools to finish, and they paid for summer school because it was in the 4 years. They paid for half, I should say, but I was on to that.
I'm the polar opposite, right? So I did the 7-year plan. So, I had a health issue at the end of sophomore year, which was kind of an ordeal, and I wasn't really happy with the school that I'd chosen. I was at Catholic University. I'd been in Catholic school from kindergarten till high school, and so Catholic U was just more of like that private school, upper middle class bubble. right? And so I took a semester off to recuperate, was back at home with my folks, didn't really know what I was going to do, transferred to a public university, really enjoyed just kind of the openness of getting a full education that's not, controlled by a religious doctrine. But it took me longer, so after 4 years, I was on my own. So I took a job at Starbucks because they had not the full-blown tuition reimbursement that they do now, but it makes sense. You can wake up early, work, and then go to classes later in the day. And then I got out of Starbucks and got a typical job, best compared to kind of Devil Wears Prada, the job a million girls would kill for, right? I mean, I was doing some cool stuff. I was producing events and working with executives and doing things at the time that I never thought I would have ever done as a store manager at Starbucks. At my time at Starbucks, I had worked up the ranks, right? By 21, I was a store manager, which is kind of unheard of in the company. And about 18 months in, I was like, I can't handle this. I can't work at a cube. The idea of a 9 to 5 was like everything I always wanted, and then it was kind of soul crushing to realize that it's not what it lives up to, right? So I quit. Worked for an event planning firm, and then I went back to the other job, the business journals, and then after about a year or so, quit again. And that's when I went out on my own. And I thought that I could be my own boss. Because both my parents own their own businesses. And my mom had a warehouse and an office. She was a distributor, so she needed that warehouse space. But my dad worked from home. And, he's worked from home for almost 30 years. And so I thought, well, if he could do it, I can do it too. And I was lonely and I was isolated and I put on 40 pounds, I always joke that, I would watch all 4 hours of the Today Show. No one should watch all 4 hours of the Today Show. And I say co-working saved my life because it helped me realize I needed a routine, right? I needed to get out of the bed, get to the gym. The gym was on the way to the co-working space I ended up working out of.
Can I stop you for just a second and ask you what to describe what co-working is? Because I actually had people on this trip who have worked regular jobs. They're in their 50s, I would say, but they didn't know what it was.
Yeah. So co-working is like this umbrella term, right? Like everyone's using it right now. It can apply to a bunch of different things. Basically, it's workspace on demand, right? So, in my consulting role now, we like to call it space as a service. Sometimes you need space for productivity. Sometimes you need space for focus. Sometimes you need space for collaboration. And so anyone right now, from a freelancer all the way to the corporate, Fortune 500, they're putting employees in co-working spaces because they don't have to sign long-term leases. They can use them short-term, like on demand. They can have meetings or off-site retreats. But yeah, it's a global phenomenon. 10 years ago, maybe there were a couple hundred co-working spaces, and this year, data says that there's over 20,000 co-working spaces around the globe, with over 1.3 million people working in them. Bali alone has 20 of them now. Who would have thunk? And so, I discovered co-working for myself when a client I was working for was like, hey, we're on the road a lot, producing events for clients like Google or the Smithsonian. We were always on site, right? And we were working out of hotel lobbies, or we were working out of coffee shops. And, in this one city, they were like, hey, let's go to a co-working space. And I was like, wow, well, co-working space, that's like if you want to be the next Uber, right? And when I got to this one in particular, it was in Kansas City, Missouri.
A place you might not ever think would have a co-working space if you didn't know
they had a couple at the time, and this was back in 2013, but it was full of freelancers and independent consultants. I'd been my own boss. I'd been able to find contracts. I'd contracted other people like myself, and we were all working remotely. But we were all struggling with, either unstable Wi-Fi at the hotel, loud, noisy coffee shops, or just something that's a little bit more professional. So you'd be like, hey, client XYZ, meet me at a professional office, rather than be like, oh, let's try to grab a table at, the local Starbucks. So yes, that's what co-working is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's your main focus now. Is
Yeah, I
finding
mean,
space.
being your own boss is not easy, right? Whether it's a freelancer, whether you have a startup that you're looking to scale, whether you sell a product, and it's stressful, it's lonely, because I think more and more people, especially in our generation, are disillusioned with that lifestyle that our parents grew up with. It doesn't exist. You can't work for a company for 30 years anymore. And more people are becoming contingent workers or third-party contractors. And so for me, the aha moment was, okay, I've screwed up being my own boss in many ways. And so if I've been able to do it for, now I'm going on 7 years. But at the time when I saw these co-working spaces, I was like, well, if I can do that here, there's a lot of other people that can do that just don't know about it. And so that's what really kind of set off my crazy pursuit of learning more about the industry, studying it, researching it. It's kind of like one of those weird, I'd gone from working for Starbucks, which is food service but hospitality, but it's also very community oriented. A lot of those stores have locals and they all get to know each other and they get to know the staff. So I had that experience, and then I'd also produced events for a division of Condé Nast and Google and Smithsonian and Living Social. And then when I got to co-working, it's kind of a combination. Like when you run a co-working space or when you open one, you have to be hospitable, you have to be customer service oriented, but you also have to do a ton of events. It's the primary marketing tool to bring people in the door, to promote your space, or to provide opportunities for members to engage and connect. And so, within 18 months, I sold my event planning firm, and I started traveling the world. I was producing some co-working industry events, just because I had that experience. The people I'd met didn't know what they were doing from a conference organization standpoint. Mm-hmm. So that really kind of spurred up the travel.
Right. Had you traveled much internationally before you got into this part of your business?
I've done like school trips,
okay.
Right? So I'm an only child. Both, like I said, both my parents own their own businesses. So vacations for us were road trips back to New York, where all of our family lived, right? Or it was wherever the conference was for either of my parents' industries. Mm-hmm. So we would pad an extra day or two at like Virginia Beach, or somewhere maybe Dewey, Delaware, right? We'd go to the conference. Either my mom or my dad would go work the trade show floor, whatever they had to do, and then maybe we'd have a day or two extra, right?
Did you do any study abroad in those first 4 years?
I didn't do.
Maybe your parents would have helped you. Okay.
But my parents, they sacrificed. They not only put me into private education, but they sent me to a couple international trips, right? Through my school, and through the church. So it was always kind of your typical, group tour, right? Where you're not really planning anything, you're not on your own itinerary, but, I'd been to Europe, I'd been to Asia, so, there had been a little bit of travel, but nothing to the extent of what I do now.
And I know now you also know a whole lot about the points and the miles systems of all these different airlines, and you have your own podcasts about them as well. You're helping.
Yeah, I produce a podcast. So, Coworkaholics, a blog that I started in 2015, and when I started it, I was really trying to focus on the industry. And I realized that it was a really small market, and there were already some blogs out there that talked about industry news, and it was a little navel-gazing, and it was a little, too insider, right? And so over the course of, random contracts and working on events and working in co-working spaces, I met a guy who's become a really great friend of mine and a travel mentor. And he's a gentleman who has a variety of different responsibilities as it relates to managing an investment portfolio. But he lives on the road, mainly domestic in the U.S., but he's been blogging for 10 years now, and his whole inspiration was, I spend so much time away from my family, my wife and my 2 kids, that I need to figure out how to maximize award travel, right? Through earning, through flights, hotel stays, but also credit cards, so that the quality time he gets with his family, he can fly them anywhere in the world, business class, or and really enjoy the experience, rather than really kind of slugging it through economy for 12 hours at a time.
Lots of long layovers and things like that.
And so, when I met Ed, I started reading his blog, Pizza in Motion. His last name is Pizzarello, but everyone calls him Ed Pizza. And what really impressed me was, like any hobby or like any enthusiast community, whether it be like Comic-Con or Dungeons and Dragons, right, whatever, there's always kind of that aspect of pay it forward. And so when we first met, my travel was really starting to ramp up, and he was like, hey, how are you doing this? How are you traveling? Do you have a strategy behind it? Are you attached to a loyalty program? What type of credit cards are you using for your business expenses? And it's really come in handy because for him, it's a little bit of a different, we always love comparing notes because we have very different travel, right? Mm-hmm. He does a little bit more expensive travel. He works for the portfolio. He's a partner, so it's a little bit different when it comes time to expenses. For me, as a freelance consultant, now my primary job is consulting on co-working, right? So it's all fun and games when the contract's signed, right? So when the client's flying you business class to Dubai, that's great. But to get that contract, I had to go to Dubai, right? And so I didn't know if I was going to get it. And so flying from the States to Dubai, you usually can't find a ticket for less than $800. The hotels are not always cheap. Things are more expensive there, food and beverage. And so I learned how to take all of the earning and put it into a little account so that way I use it for trips when I'm not expensing it to the client. So if I have to go to a trade show or if I have to go to a conference to network to find new business, it's a lot less stressful when I'm not saying, I have to figure out a way to make up this $3,000-$4,000 investment. I can enjoy myself and a little bit be more relaxed and even close more deals when I'm like, wow, I flew here on only 60,000 miles round trip. I'm at the JW Marriott, for 20,000 points a night. They upgraded me, so now I'm on the club level. I don't have to worry about buying meals. I can actually bring my client up to the club level and kind of impress them because, they can drink, they can eat. So that's really kind of how I fell in love with figuring out how to make points and miles work for me.
While we're on that subject, if you had to give 3 quick tips to people listening about how to really ramp up their participation in this whole miles world, what would you...
If I learned anything from Ed, the first thing is have a goal, right? And so if you know that you're trying to plan a dream honeymoon, right? Then do a little research around where you're hosting your wedding. Is it at a hotel? Well, then make sure that all of your, spending is attached to your main hotel bill, which is attached to a hotel loyalty program, because you're going to earn points not just on the room that you're in. You're going to get some bonus points for all the rooms that your guests are staying in, and they're going to give you points for the overall spend for the catering. And then on top of that, find a credit card that works for you, that will earn points in a system that then you can transfer to any applicable airline. So there are people out there that their goal is just to earn points and miles for maybe 2 vacations a year. So they're earning and not necessarily burning immediately. For me, I kind of book it by where do I need to go for work that I'm not going to be able to expense that travel. And then I've got a goal in mind as to how much I need to earn. And then I also burn it as quick as possible, because a lot of people in the program world will say, like, it's great if you're sitting on 1 million points, but what happens if all of a sudden the program announces a devaluation? So you've got this goal in mind, and now the program's been devalued, and you've already kind of locked yourself into an earning strategy that might not get you where you need to go. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is also, like, have some planning. So booking the flight to India, I had an idea as to kind of how I needed to get here and where I was going. So I got, a killer Polaris, brand new Polaris, United business class seat from Newark to Bombay. It's a 15-hour flight. It retails for as much as $13,000. I flew for $380.94. I had a plan. I knew I had a global upgrade because I was the status member. I was stashing that global upgrade. It was the last one. It was burning a hole in my pocket. I knew I had some what they call ETC, electronic ticket certificates, from when they bumped me from another flight. So I hadn't spent it. I was stashing it. And then I knew I had to get from Mumbai to Chennai. So 8,000 United miles on Air India on a 2-hour flight was perfect. Polar opposite of that, I didn't know where I was going after this trip. I just found out about 2 days ago. So it cost me way more in points and miles to get out of India to get back to LA for a work trip than if I would have booked it out maybe 3 months ago. So proper planning will give you more options and give you better buying and burning ability. And then the third one is, do what works for you. There are some people that are obsessed with Southwest Airlines. They get the companion pass, which means that anyone can fly with them for free anytime, anywhere Southwest flies. That's awesome. If you're primarily a domestic traveler, or just do like Mexico or the Caribbean, Southwest might work for you. You have to fly a lot to get status with them in some cases, and they're very flyer friendly, but for some people it doesn't work for them. A lot of my travel is international. Southwest isn't the best airline for me. I've been a Premier 1K member at United Airlines. I did a status match this past year to get Executive Platinum on American, which meant that I only had to spend $4,000 in Premier qualifying dollars rather than $12,000. And so just do what works for you. If you join some of those travel Facebook groups where you read those travel blogs, everyone's opinionated. They're like something else everyone has, opinions are, everyone's got one. But just do what works for you. Some people only want to stay at Ritz-Carlton's. Other people are totally happy earning points with IHG and using them at Holiday Inns. It's just know who you are and what you like and go with it.
Do you have a favorite credit card? Like you said, everybody has an opinion.
Yeah, so I try to be really careful with how I use credit cards. So I do share an Amex Platinum, mainly because of the benefits you get, even though there's got a high annual fee. It will cover your cost of either Clear or TSA PreCheck. I need to renew my global entry. It's been 5 years. They give you a statement credit for that. They'll give you a statement credit for Uber. Amex also has a really good transfer program. So their membership rewards points will get you a lot of bang for your buck on a wide variety of airline partners and networks. You can transfer Amex to pretty much any of the big three: One World, SkyTeam, or Star Alliance. So the other one I have had is the United Mileage Plus card, because I was a United flyer. I'll be more American Airlines this year. I'm not going to have as top status as I did with United. I might go back. But I got United Club United Club passes with that. Extra check bags before I got status, which, you can save up to $100 each flight. So those were the main two that I had. But to be honest, I'm kind of like, I'm not a credit card expert. I'm more about how to earn points through existing spend. So there's a lot of bloggers out there that know way more about credit cards. For me, it's like I got 125,000 United miles this past year just from renting Hertz rental cars, which is, I needed to rent rental cars anyway. So if I'm on the road a lot, I need to go to clients, we need rental cars. I also did the math. It's $40 each way from my apartment to O'Hare on Lyft or Uber, right? I'm only usually home for 2 days. I can book Hertz rental cars for $18 a day. Because I'm a Premier 1K on United, I'm top tier status matched on Hertz. So I'm not booking an $18 Toyota Corolla. I'm booking an $18 rental. I get my pick of the litter. So I'm driving Cadillacs, Infinities, Mercedes-Benz convertibles. They get to know me by name in Chicago. They'll give me upgrade. But that 120 or 30,000 United miles came in handy. That was a couple free trips home to see my parents and my grandma. It was a free trip to Puerto Vallarta for my annual trip down there for Thanksgiving. And, that's partly how I use my miles to get home from India starting tomorrow. So my real passion is, like, if you're already spending money, right? Another example is the United Mileage Plus portal, mainly because I've been such a United flyer. I love Starbucks. Go to Starbucks every day when I'm in the States. You get one mile per dollar when you buy a Starbucks card through United. And so if I'm spending, I'm sad to say, $100 or so a month on Starbucks, that's about 1,200 United miles. That's a tenth of the way to a one-way domestic ticket, just from going to Starbucks, right? So just being smart about how do you spend your money, and I try to make it a point that without relying on credit card, that I don't spend a dime unless I'm going to earn something somehow.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. I'm just hearing, get something else for your money when you're already spending it.
Yeah,
things you need.
Listen, like, for anyone out there that's like saving up for travel or wants to travel as maybe a nomad, needs to do it on a budget. If you do have a daily expense like Starbucks, which a lot of us do, then sure, like, you can even stack it more, right? You can buy that Starbucks card through United's Mileage Plus X app, and you get even more miles if you pay for it on a United card. The challenge, though, is credit cards carry interest. So you need to be prepared, and you need to be able to pay that off monthly. If you're not paying your balance off monthly, and you're paying 16, 17, 20% interest, the earning you're getting via points and miles doesn't really add up, because you're spending a ton more on interest.
Yeah. So,
some people can do it, and some people are a little bit more diligent. My favorite card in my wallet is the PayPal Business Debit Card. A lot of our clients will pay us electronically. We get better transaction fees on PayPal. It's a MasterCard debit card. It works around the world. It will pull directly out of your PayPal balance, and it's a card that never gets declined. So if you don't have enough money in your PayPal balance, it will pull it out of a backup source bank account. And the best part is I get 1% cash back.
Yeah.
So every month I'm getting $40 or $50 extra refunded and just added to my account. So that's really my favorite card to use, and that's the one I use the most.
Yeah, get a strategy and make it work for you.
Yeah, like there are so many strategies, right? So the podcast that Becky referenced earlier, it's called Miles to Go. Ed Pizza's the host of it. There's a second podcast we launched called Now Boarding. Ed's part of a network of bloggers called Boarding Area. And so if you're interested in travel, besides subscribing to the School of Travels and subscribing to Miles to Go and now boarding, if you go to boarding area, they got bloggers from all like ends of the world, right? They got the luxury bloggers, they got the family bloggers, they got the deals bloggers, they got bloggers that focus only on the credit cards, they got the bloggers that focus on unique perspectives like single females or retirees. And so go there and try to find what kind of how you categorize yourself. And, you know, don't listen to all the outside noise, because everyone will tell you what works for them. And what works for them, as with anything in life, is not going to necessarily work for you. So
I've always found I pick and choose the tips that sound good to me based on my background, and then
for sure
get further and further as I fail and try to go another place and keep traveling.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys on that site that are like super smart experts on Alaska Air now with the merger when they acquired Virgin America. But I don't do a lot of West Coast business anymore, even though I am going to LA next week. And where I am in Chicago, there's not a lot of routes on that alliance or that airline, but it works for them, right? They earn it somewhere else, they apply it somewhere else, they move all the different accounts. I would say that if you do get a credit card, that's like, you know, Capital One really recently just opened the gates to be able to book on a lot more different airline partners, right? Just do that research and make sure you sign up. You need to have those loyalty accounts with each of those airlines in order to transfer. And you also need to plan accordingly, because sometimes it takes up to 2 to 3 weeks, you know, and not every airline, depending on your status level, will hold it for you. Sometimes you make out and you get an agent that's like, sure, we'll put it on a complimentary hold. They know it might only take a couple of days for those points to transfer, but sometimes you need to, you know, I was in a tough spot. I needed to move some Marriott points over. It took about 10 days, right? And I was like, oh, it was a close call. So plan, you know, fail to plan to fail.
Yeah, exactly. So, by the way, this episode is a whole new area of the School of Travels. Yeah. You know, it's a whole different school of what you need to learn about when you start traveling.
Yeah. Well, and I know nothing. Like, I mean, if you think that sounds smart, that's like 101. That's not even 101. That's
get in the boarding area. You're going to learn a lot more.
Yeah, most definitely.
Read up. There's so much more out there.
Hopefully you'll have Ed on, because like these people are amazing. And there's a lot of events out there, right? Like Frequent Traveler University, the Chicago seminars. There's Award Travel 101 is this awesome Facebook group. It's run by a Navy vet who actually retired early from the Navy because he started Award Travel 101 as a Facebook group. There's over 55,000 people in it. It's now his full-time job.
Wow.
He makes a living, provides for a family with 2 kids, lives in Atlanta, and he does these really cool meetups, right? And people meet up to geek out, share knowledge, and just, you know, brag about the best redemptions they got. You know, oh, I flew in the new Singapore suites, and I only did it for this much.
It's like Comic-Con for travelers.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there's something about
enthusiast.
You know, Trekkies, Comic-Con, stamp collectors. There's something for everyone out there.
Well, what is it about travel that keeps you going, that just keeps, you know, making you so enthusiastic about helping other people join this kind of, or I don't want to say itinerant lifestyle, but like being able to get out there, move around from co-working space to co-working space?
So that's a tough answer, because even this last trip has been very trying, right? I mean,
yes,
you know, a different hotel pretty much every single night, which is not different than my normal life, but in India, right? And you know,
altogether different.
Yeah, and I'm usually at a Marriott or Starwood or Hilton, and I know I've got really fast internet. I always have really good breakfast, and you know, this has been a little bit different. I love travel because before I really started doing it extensively, I had a really closed mindset. And it was an Americanized, westernized, capitalistic view on how the world worked. And by going to these different co-working conferences and then starting to work on co-working projects and opening up spaces in places like, Bali, Dubai, working for clients in London, it really made me understand humanity better. It taught me patience, it taught me gratitude, and it also taught me, even though I'm doing a lot of talking right now, sometimes you just need to shut up, and you need to listen, and you just need to take in what's happening around you or what other people are saying. And I think it's really changed the way that I view the world, and where the world's going. As more people can work remotely, and as more people choose to work remotely, it's not just that they can. One of the biggest misconceptions about the Affordable Care Act, also pretty much references Obamacare. The Congressional Budget Office had a statistic that basically said that there were going to be something like 2 million less jobs in the economy directly due to the Affordable Care Act. One party took that as a talking point that it was going to kill jobs, when in actuality, data has proven it's been more than 2 million jobs since the Affordable Care Act was passed. But it wasn't because they killed the jobs, it's because people quit the jobs because they weren't dependent, and this really applies to mainly Americans, because we're the only folks in the world that really don't have health care provided. They did it because they could finally afford a health insurance plan that was not directly tied to a soul-crushing 9-to-5 cubicle-dwelling job. And so, as more people choose to work for themselves, they're starting to discover the challenges of working from home. There are some days I really like working from home. Most days I can't do it. I need to go to a space, I need to be around people, even if it's just to say hello over the water cooler, or to maybe grab lunch with someone. I've even gotten business deals. I worked out of a co-working space in D.C. The team that was next to me, I didn't really know who they were. They were just a little bit older than I thought they would be for shopping at what appeared to be Hot Topic. But they just so happened to have the #1 internet radio station for pop punk. And one day, after 6 months of knowing each other, they were like, "Oh, our investor wants to talk to you. We're thinking about launching live events." It was Benji Madden.
Wow.
And so before you know it, now I'm flying to LA, and I'm working for Benji and Joel Madden and the internet radio station that they've invested in, because the people sitting next to me for the last 6 months, they got to know me. I didn't spend a single dime on business development costs. I didn't have to market to them. I didn't have to network them. And so, that said, when you experience that, it's a little addictive. And then you start realizing, I can travel. I can go to these places. I can work remote. And so...
You were doing work from the back of the rickshaw.
Yeah, I mean, I published a blog post. I closed a deal a couple days before. Was negotiating on a contract. But the travel, I think as travel evolves and as technology evolves, there's more and more low-cost carriers now, too. Every day in the news, we see round-trip flights to Spain for $200, fly to Bali for $350. And so, if you are attuned, I can't imagine someone who wants to work remote, or does work remote, that is not somewhat plugged in to this travel world, because you're saving yourself money and you're enabling yourself to go to places that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise, and you've got the freedom and the flexibility to do it. We were in Baltimore, Maryland, right, touring co-working spaces, and there were these two women in the kitchen, just kind of like what you do, having lunch, and one of them on their phone was like, "Oh my god, we can, there's this, airfare, right? We can fly business class on, what just happened last week, Cathay Pacific. Had $20,000 first class tickets to Vietnam for, $450 or $700, something cheap, right? They saw an airfare, they booked the ticket right then and there. They don't have to apply for a vacation. They don't have to wait for their manager to approve it. So if you've got those miles in your account, and there's a sale, you can jump on it. So I would say, if you want to work remote or be a digital nomad, having an understanding as to how the travel world works. And, you know, especially digital marketers, you're spending a ton of money on Facebook. You know, Chase Inc. codes Facebook advertising dollars a specific category, so you're earning like 3 times the points. You can go to Staples, and Staples codes as office supply. Office supply gets you 5 times the earning on Chase Inc. cards. You could just be buying gift cards. But, you know, so, you know, I think if you want to be able to do it in a way that's not super painful, having that basic knowledge is really important.
Right. So I think I'm learning from you here now that I just need to research a lot more about these little tricks. Even if I'm a person who hasn't done this ever before, you know, even if I am in the U.S. or just somewhere where I can just start spending my money in a wiser way to make it work towards travel.
Yeah. And that's really what really got Coworkaholic to change. We pivoted, and instead of just talking about the co-working industry, I realized that there was a far larger audience out there, that members of co-working spaces that want to know how they can travel better, cheaper, less painful, just by leveraging whatever type of spend they already have.
And it's really, I think it's the people you meet when you're traveling as well. I mean, I met our friend in common, Matthias, who then has met you now. He's known you for, 3 years, I think?
Yeah, I met him in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we met because of him, and it's all because of co-working when I went to his co-working space. So
yeah.
It's the people you can meet at these co-working spaces, it's amazing. And like you said, they're sitting next to you.
Yeah.
So you get to know them in a way that feels
it's a
totally
more
natural.
organic way. And I think so I'm passionate about co-working for a couple different reasons. One is because my dad's business particularly has not suffered, but as a distributor for medical equipment, he's starting to get competition from businesses like Amazon, right? But he's also worked from home. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, right? And there's a little bit of an isolation and a loneliness where maybe he's not in tune to certain opportunities, you know, that could happen just through, there's a great term that people use called accelerated serendipity. The example I gave when I worked for Adobe Radio, that was accelerated serendipity, right? I had the skill set and the experience, they had the need, we sat next to each other, I didn't pitch them, they approached me, right? Having worked at Starbucks, I see how people operate. They show up to Starbucks, they put their headphones on, and they work on their laptops. They're not talking to anyone. It's also super awkward when you have to ask a total and complete stranger, hey, can you watch basically my life? My backpack is my life. Can you watch this while I use the restroom? That's a little awkward. When you're at a co-working space, your guard's down. You're in a safe space. You can leave your computer at a workstation and not be worried about someone running off with it. So because your guard is down, you're maybe more likely to strike up a conversation, right? Where you wouldn't want to talk to the crazy stranger next to you at that coffee shop.
I can tell you in Chiang Mai, where I have been the last 6 weeks before this trip, there were people who would come in, put their life down, like you said, their bags, their computer, and they would leave for 4 hours and go out and about in the town, and they could trust everybody in there because, you know, there's a lot of security that the co-working spaces will put in action as well. Like we had fingerprint IDs to get back in, so yeah, it's much more comfortable in a co-working space if you've never thought or never tried it before.
Yeah, but yeah, that is everything that we love talking about at Coworkaholic. So we do, you know, space reviews. So if you're going to a different city and you want to figure out like a space that we've been to, we'll give a really fair and honest like at the end of the day, what's most important, right? How's the Wi-Fi? How are some of the amenities? Is the staff helpful? And where's the location, right? Or is there parking, right? But it's also like flight deals or, you know, even ways to. So I did a whole blog piece last year on AT&T and T-Mobile. So I've been an AT&T customer forever. Spent way more money than I ever would like to admit on AT&T. I've got 4 or 5 lines for, you know, phones, tablets, and for a contractor or 2, you know, phone instead of, it's easier to save the contractor a phone for a project sometimes. But as I traveled more internationally, I was paying, like, I'd be overseas for like 4 days and I'd get a bill that was like $600, all these international charges. And so I finally had it. I was like, I don't know what's better out there. I knew for a fact Verizon did not have a better international plan. Both of them have since changed to like day passes, but they're still kind of getting you no matter which way, coming and go, and they're going to get money out of you. T-Mobile, though, I get international roaming for free to 140 countries. And Netflix for free. So, yeah, okay, so I'm saving $12 a month on Netflix, whatever, but my bill's the same. So whether I'm going to 4 countries in 1 month or I'm going to no international countries in 1 month, my bill's the same, rather than having these spikes of, 1 month my bill was like $1,200 for AT&T.
Whoa.
So that's kind of some of the stuff that we try to share. Be like, hey, listen, being your own boss is tough enough. You want to make sure you're being diligent about how you spend your money. Basically most of the posts are like, learn from how I've screwed up and, take what I'm learning. And it's really because of Ed, how he has inspired me. He's helped me out countless times. Whether it was like giving me access to a paid subscription site to get a better perspective on what inventory was available, what I was trying to use one of my upgrade certificates, right? He's even, gifted me upgrade certificates, or sat me down and showed me how to use a different card better. And, it's just like anything with giving, giving is just as great as receiving, And so I had a bunch of regional premier upgrades that were going to expire that I knew I couldn't use. And so, my niece just got married to a Marine who just got stationed to Hawaii. What a tough gig. And so they were traveling separately. She'd never traveled long haul before. The military was only going to cover an economy ticket. It only took 2 hours, but we sat down, we mapped out the best possible route for what the government was going to cover, threw her per premier upgrade because I knew it was going to expire anyway, and for about $1,000, instead of flying coach from D.C. to Hawaii, she at least was able to fly first class, which, as a 20-year-old, newly married, excited, never having traveled that far ever, let alone alone, not that you get that much better service in first class, but you do. And they'll take better care of you in case, your connections get delayed or whatever, right? And the joy of being able to help her out with that as a gift, and just, it made my day. So I'm a big believer in, paying it forward.
I think that's, being generous with what you learn about travel and the memories that you've given her, like, it's so important and valuable in so many ways you don't even know. And that actually reminds me, I would love for you to talk just for a minute about what's on the back of your rickshaw, because I thought that was so beautiful too.
So, once again, not turn this into an Ed Pizza love fest. So, Matthias, who's our mutual friend, Becky, my mutual friend, back in like June, he was like, hey, there's this rickshaw thing. It's going through India, but like we can make it our own. Like, why don't we go check out co-working spaces? Because like I've been to over 500 spaces in like 30 something countries. I love checking out spaces. I love getting to know the owners and documenting them. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, right? So this was supposed to be like fun, adventurous way to spend the week between Christmas and New Year's, right? Just kind of chill out. And in August of this year, after a pretty lengthy illness, a dear friend of mine in the co-working industry and a real stand-up, like, all-star in the global community, passed away suddenly. He had been diagnosed with cancer in September 2017, and we thought that he was in remission at the beginning of 2018. His name is Matija Raus. He's from Zagreb, Croatia. And not only did he have one of the first co-working spaces in Croatia, he was one of the first people I ever met at my very first co-working conference in 2013. We hit it off. He was one of the first people to really kind of smack me down and provide me a European perspective on how the world worked, right? And helped me really open my eyes. So I was always forever grateful to him. I'd only see him once a year, but we talked all the time, right? We really got to know each other. So not only did he have this space in Croatia, but he also started the Coworking Croatia Alliance to try to get all these spaces together to work together and grow the industry. And he launched the European Freelance Week, right? So there's this week in October every year with probably like a couple hundred events in like 30 or 40 different cities throughout Europe. And it's to promote freelancers. And so a lot of them take place at co-working spaces, but he did a lot of work to get in with, the EU Parliament and try to set some, not rules and regulations, but some protections for when you work as a freelancer, right? There is a freelancer union, it's in the States, but they don't provide your traditional, like, unionized protection, right? And so, right before he passed away, and it was quite sudden, it had come back and just things happened real fast. Ed told me, hey, I'm going to go to Disney World. And Ed and I, we really bonded over our love of Disney, right? He's got kids, so he's got a really good excuse to know all about how to save money at Disney, right? I'm going to be 34 in 2 weeks. I don't have any kids. I have no excuse for why I have an annual pass for Disney World, but I love it. And a group of my friends and I go every year for Food and Wine Festival. So that's how we bonded. But he goes, I'm going to go to Walt Disney World. And there's this thing called the Parkeology Challenge. There's this whole blog dedicated to riding every single ride in all 4 theme parks in Orlando in one operational day. You have to tweet a photo with a specific hashtag. There's all these rules. Like, the blogosphere is quite fierce on protecting and, like, being sure everyone, kind of follows instructions. And he goes, I'm going to do it to raise money. I want people to pledge $1, $5. Some people pledge, like, $50 for every weekend ride. There's, like, 48 total rides. There were 47 operational rides that day. He's so serious, he went down to do a dry run. Between the dry run and the official day that he did it with Mommy Points from the Points guy, he invited me to tag along, right? I was kind of like his social media guy, but also kind of like the bag carrier. I mean, it's aggressive, right? Like, we were up at like 5 a.m. We were at rope drop at 2 of the 4 parks, We got 41 out of the 47 rides, which wasn't too bad.
Wow.
But he wanted to raise money for Make-A-Wish. So, the number one most desired Make-A-Wish is to go to Disney World. And a lot of those kids have such physical challenges that there's an entire, they call it the, I'm going to butcher this, I'm going to blank right now, but it's called Give Kids the World. And it's a resort in Orlando that was opened by a local hotel owner. And all of them, they're pretty much villas that are all handicap accessible. And they have a lot of rides there for a lot of the kids that might not be able to do most of the rides at Disney. And they've got medical services and everything. So in one day, he raised over $16,000, right?
That's wonderful.
And so as this was all happening, and I was not part of the planning, but, helping him check in on the Disney app every day, figure out how we can get our fast passes, everything, Mattia died. And it just kind of struck me to the core. It was a massive surprise. We had thought that he had been on the rebound. And I realized that this trip was not just a pleasure, but it was a privilege. And it felt... death obviously has a way of making things feel frivolous. And so what I decided to do was, okay, if we were already going to go to co-working spaces, then I'm going to try to raise money for every space I can go to while doing this. when Mattia got sick, if you're a freelancer and you have insurance, it's one thing to know that your medical bills, for the most part, will be covered. But you're not getting disability pay, right? And so within under a week, his global community of cheerleaders and champions, they raised $50,000 for him to help subsidize the money that he was losing from not being able to work. I mean, this was an aggressive form of cancer, multiple rounds of chemo. There was no way he was even going to be able to do his volunteer work, let alone paid work. And so the European Coworking Assembly, even though I'm not European based, I'm a supporter of them, we decided to establish an emergency relief fund in his name for freelancers, and we're finally put it all together, and very shortly we'll have enough funds to start so that if you're in a co-working space, if you're not in a co-working space, if you're a co-working owner, if you hear of someone who is a freelancer and has a medical emergency, we will have a stipend available. It's not going to be $50,000 for every person. We'd like to provide maybe €1,000, but €1,000 is €1,000, and it can help you pay rent for the first month, right?
Is there a place that people can go if they want to donate to this fund, or is it?
Yeah, so right now you can go to coworkaholic.com. I've got a blog post that's pinned to the top of the website. We're also Coworkaholic on Facebook, right? The donation page is on there. And then if you're interested in learning more about Mattia himself, the hashtag is #LoveMattia. And there's actually a website, lovemattia.com.
How do you spell Mattia?
Mattia is M-A-T-I-J-N.
Okay. I've seen that name many times this week, and I wasn't an intuitive spelling for me, so...
Yeah. So you can find out more about him and about it's a brand new fund that was established by the European Coworking Assembly. So this is the first fundraiser we've ever done, right, to get this up off the ground. And I wanted to use this as an example or as an inspiration that if you're a nomad or if you're a freelancer and if you're going on a trip, and there's been this new big movement of purposeful travel, if you're looking for something to contribute to, sometimes it's a specific foundation or nonprofit on behalf of someone who had a specific illness or disease. My best friend who does the Disney trips with us every year, she's our conductor, right? She organizes it. Her mom and her aunt work at Disney, so she gets at the reduced rate rooms. This year she was within 2 days of Mattia passing, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so this year also I said, well, instead of us just drinking around the world at Epcot being fools, let's try to raise money for MS, right? And so now that's a fundraiser that we're going to do every year now too. So I think people don't realize that there's really crazy travel adventures out there that if you want to do it, but you'd be surprised with a little button on Facebook or a little blog post with a donate here button, you can raise some significant money to make a difference while you're just having fun along the way. No different than people who raise money for 5Ks and marathons.
Yeah, people say that travel is so selfish sometimes, that you're just you're leaving your family to go travel, or you're leaving you're having fun and we're here working, but it can be a great way to fundraise, you're right.
That's very true, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of, I think, digital nomads. I think a lot of people now like using the word location independent because digital nomads have really kind of become so mainstream that the media and others have really latched onto the whole digital nomads are selfish, they're self-absorbed, they come in, they gentrify a town like Chiang Mai, they ruin things, they come in, they take, they leave. But I've really met a lot of folks that are digital nomads or location independent that want to kind of prove them wrong. And
And they do.
And they do, right?
Yeah, they give back in so many ways. Well, I know that I've seen a few of our fellow rickshaw people walking by us looking for our awards ceremony that we need to go to.
We need to check that out.
Yeah, we need to go and check that out. So, but I want to ask before we go, where can people find you if they want? I know you've said coworkaholic.com.
Yeah. Coworkaholic.com.
Is it the best place?
We're on Facebook, pretty active there. Instagram, we're always doing fun stories. So Instagram's also Coworkaholic. If you're a Twitter user, I'm not as good on Twitter.
Me neither.
It's a lot, but we are on Twitter too. It's at the Coworkaholic. And then if you're interested in podcasts and you're already listening, like I said, School of Travels, Miles to Go, and Now Boarding, you can find them anywhere you can find podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, any directory, we're there.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. It's been great to meet you this week.
Oh, it's been such a blast.
I look forward to meeting you again. Should we do another rickshaw adventure?
Well, maybe take a break from Rickshaw, but we need to do something adventurous.
I'm ready to follow you to Disney World.
Please.
It's been too long.
I'm trying to figure out, well, you're the Tokyo expert.
Yes.
I have never been to Tokyo Disney, but to take the Disney Challenge up a level, I have in mind, this is probably going to be a 2020 goal, I want to do every single Disney park in the world in 1 week.
I think you can do it. I think you're the
France,
kind of planner that could do this.
Shanghai, Japan, California, and Florida.
Use the miles, baby.
Right? Use the miles.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I hope that you learned a lot from my interview with Mike and took a lot of notes during that episode, because there's so much to dive into in the world of not only co-working once you start exploring spaces. And trust me, there are co-working spaces now seemingly around the world. So even if you're sitting in your hometown and you've never heard of a co-working space, you might just find one in your very own town, and you can go and check it out, see what kind of people are there. Maybe you might even make an unexpected connection like Mike described when he started working for Benji Madden. I am going to put all the links to what Mike mentioned for coworkaholic.com and the Twitter and Instagram accounts, as well as Facebook. Also, we're going to put a link to the fund for Mattia Rouse. If you'd like to donate in Mattia's memory, he was a great champion for co-working, especially in Europe, as Mike described. Also, we're going to put links to Miles to Go and Now Boarding, the podcast that Mike mentioned. Like always, I want to leave you with a travel quote. I looked for one this week, particularly relating to road trips, because I would say the road trip that Mike and I were a part of on the Rickshaw Challenge was perhaps the most memorable one I've ever been on in my life, and I don't know if future ones will ever come close to it, unless I decide to do another type of challenge by a similar company. This quote is by Victoria Erickson, and it says, "Road trips are the equivalent of human wings. Ask me to go on one anywhere. We'll stop in every small town and learn the history and stories, feel the ground and capture the spirit. Then we'll turn it into our own story that will live inside our history to carry with us always. Because stories are more important than things." I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from travel that I've had as well, is that you get so many stories by traveling that you'll remember for the rest of your life, and you can share with people and they might even learn from it. And I always hope with this podcast that you are inspired by a story that someone shares, and I hope that Mike got to inspire you this week as well. So I hope that you have a great week. In the next episode, I'm going to be bringing you my interview with 3 Norwegians from one of the other teams on the Rickshaw Challenge. And spoiler alert, only 2 of them ended up talking in the interview, although the 3rd one was in the room the whole time. So I hope that you tune in for that next week, and have a wonderful week.
Thanks for listening to the School of Travels podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a rating wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks to The Sam Chase for allowing us to use their song, In a Perfect World. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode, and remember to always let travel be your teacher.
If you keep your options open, there are places you will go. They will treat you like the kings and queens your parents thought you'd be when you were born. You'd see it all with your head get up standing tall, and you'd look back and think it's funny how you spent your time and money